craft beer specifically, I should say, tends to draw some really, really nice characters. So I'm proud to be a part of it.
Welcome to TapThatAZ. I'm your host, Eric Walters. In this episode, sit down with Steve McFate from McFate Brewing Company, or as I still call it, Fate Brewing Company. Many of you know the story behind that. If you don't, stay tuned, and we'll talk about that in this episode. But Steve has been one of those guys that I've wanted as a guest on the show for a long time. So the original location they opened up on Scottsdale Road in Shea was my local spot. I lived just a couple miles from there, so great food, great people, great beer, and I just wanted, Steve's got that reputation in this industry of just being a great guy who's willing to help whoever needs help. So wanted to get him on the show and talk with him, and he did not disappoint. Just a great guy, and I hope you enjoyed this conversation. Don't forget to check out our YouTube channel now. We're putting videos up for some of the episodes we do. No video for this one, but stay tuned. Hopefully we get back there sometime and do a video for this. But check out the YouTube channel, and let's tap into McFate Brewing Company. We're going to start right now, and Steve is starting off. He's got some questions for me.
Yeah, so I was just curious how this all came about, what your interest level is, what brought you to want to do something like this. What's the end game? What's the goal? Hobby, something you want to turn into regular content? Curious to hear your story.
So I started off with, so I didn't drink much craft beer in Ohio. Like, we didn't really have a huge, at least where I grew up, it was like Busch Light, and if you were crazy and like outside the box, you drank like Killian's, right? so that was the big outside the box. So I moved out here in 2007, and the first taste of craft beer that I had was Beaver Street Railhead Red. So that one was like, wow, this is really good. This is like, it was better than anything I ever had. And then shortly after that, Mother Road opened up, and that black IPA, the Lost Highway, just blew me away. So I've always liked craft beer. And I did a podcast with a friend, a music podcast, and we always talked about what we were drinking, and I was always drinking like local beers. So he's like, dude, you should do a podcast where you go and like go to the breweries. So in I think in November of 2000 and would have been 15, one of those years, about a year and a half ago, I just started reaching out to places, and places were really open. I'm like, I want you guys to tell your story, right? So that's my whole point, is to allow you to tell your story. So it started off as a hobby, but over the last few months, it's really accelerated into something a lot bigger, because I love the craft beer community here in Arizona. Like, it's just everybody's so welcoming. And I've noticed there's a void there's a opportunity to get Arizona beer like on the big map.
On the map.
Yeah, exactly. So that's what my new mission is. My mission at this point is to kind of use this show and some other things that I'm working on to get Arizona on the map. So whether it's through podcasts, or whether it's through getting writers together all under one umbrella, or video content, just creating a bunch of content to get Arizona out there. So
very cool.
That's my goal. Yeah.
Well, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Good luck to you on that. And it sounds like it's working.
So far, so good. Everybody's been really receptive. Get a lot of help from guys like you. Everyone that's like, whatever you need. Rob and Paul from the Brewers Guild, met with them a few days ago, and we're working on some pretty cool stuff. So they're like, dude, you can get things out. We're happy to be a part of that.
Well, cool.
So thank you for asking. Yeah,
absolutely.
So I'm with Steve McFate. We are at the south location, Scottsdale Road, McDowell. What did we say? The southwest side?
Yeah. Basically just south of McDowell on the east side of Scottsdale Road.
Okay.
So right behind Papago Plaza.
Gotcha.
Lots of craft beer people know Papago Plaza, so we're one freestanding building just to the south.
Right. This place is beautiful too.
Thank you.
I love it. Yes. Completely different than the place up north.
Yeah, just a little bit.
Yeah.
A whole lot bigger for sure. So we actually just turned 2 at this location. Our 2-year. We didn't celebrate an anniversary. We're going to kind of wait till it cools down and maybe do a anniversary party between the 2 stores.
Okay.
But 2 years in this location. Took me about a year and a half to get it up and going.
Okay.
9-10 months worth of a build out, and the rest of that time was obviously spent on planning and permits and all that kind of stuff.
All the fun stuff, right? Yeah.
Yeah, but no, it came out well. Thank you. I appreciate it. So we're about 400 seats here compared to the original location, which we're lucky if we could squeeze maybe 45, 50 people in there.
Okay, yeah.
So it's vastly different,
Yeah.
not only in terms of just seating capacity, but also the size of the brewery. We started with a little 7-barrel system there, and we're doing 30-barrel batches over here.
Oh, wow.
So
Okay.
it was a little bit more.
Yeah. So, well, let's get. I definitely want to dig in that, but
Sure.
why beer? Like, how did you decide to get into this?
Interesting question.
Yeah. He's like, I need a drink.
Yeah, well, like so many, kind of like your story for the love of craft.
Yeah.
You know, and even before I think it was called craft. Well, certainly before it was called craft. When I started drinking beer when I was a younger guy, I was always chasing down what I would consider something a little bit more eclectic.
Okay.
Of course, was drinking the Coors and the Buds and whatever might be available for the weekend party or whatever.
Yeah.
But I remember when I got to the point where I could go out and legally buy my own beer, chasing down a lot of European beer at that point. So it ended up being lots of imports. And so beer at that point, fuller flavor. Anyway, fast forward, that love of something that's got a full flavor to it, has some complexity to it, was something that I obviously enjoyed and continued to kind of grow with. And as the craft beer revolution was starting to come into play, I thought, and not backing up a step, I had also been a home brewer. And what got me into home brewing was basically everything about the craft itself. So hanging out, brewing with friends on the weekend, enjoying obviously the fruits of our labor,
Right.
but being able to produce some beers that back in the day wouldn't have necessarily been readily available. So it was a hobby, certainly.
Yeah.
And kind of evolved into, over a period of time, well, wouldn't it be cool to kind of see if I could maybe turn that into a business or an opportunity? So that had been in my mind for years. My background is all in finance. The majority of my adult career was spent in a partnership in a finance company. It's a mortgage lending company. And as 2008, 9 rolling along, obviously the market's pretty ugly.
Yeah.
And it was apparent that it was going to be ugly for a period of time as well. So I told my business partner at that point that I was really interested in checking this whole beer scene out. And it's
like
funny,
on a serious level.
To a serious level.
Yeah.
And it's funny because my business partner in that company was a childhood friend, so we knew each other really, really well. And he kind of scratched his head and goes, yeah, the markets are ugly now, but you've done so well and we're doing well, even though things have slowed down, we're going to be fine. And I'm like, I'm not worried necessarily about that. I'm just like, it's time to do something different.
Yeah.
So he talked me into calling my my checkout time, so to speak, a sabbatical.
Okay.
So we agreed that I'd take a year off, and I basically tried to learn as much about the beer industry as I possibly could in that year period of time, and then was going to make a decision one way or the other to either jump back in or pursue the goal. And anyway, that year I traveled a bunch, checked out as many breweries as I could, whether brew pub, brewery, production, anybody that would talk to me, anybody that I could get 5 minutes of their time kind of thing. And I appreciate when people approach me for that same thing, because that's exactly how I got to be able to at least become somewhat familiar with what all is involved.
All the business side of it too, not just like make good beer. And
Exactly.
Then,
There's the whole dynamic of, we sit around, we drink great beer, have great conversations, and you meet lots of people that are fun, but there's the whole business aspect of it, which, completely different, obviously, field than what I had done before. So I took that year, enjoyed every moment of it. That year kind of came and went very quickly, and it was time to make the decision, either go back in or basically
take the plunge.
Take the exit.
Yeah.
So I did decide to take the exit, which was pretty crazy. And I, at that point, decided to get serious about it. I attended the Siebel Institute in Chicago.
Okay.
Did their concise course. I didn't do their full one. I wish I would have had the time or the luxury of taking that much time to be able to do it, but it wasn't possible.
Okay.
And then I moved up. Well, anyway, back up one more time. When I was in traveling that year that I had taken off, I was able to meet Tom Hennessy out of Colorado Boy in Ridgeway, Colorado. So
Okay.
kind of southwestern Colorado.
Yeah.
Super nice guy, very informative, and he at that point in time was starting what he called an immersion course, which was basically inviting somebody up who had an interest in getting into the industry in a week's period of time, which is obviously very short, but give them an overview, let them spend a day in the brewery, look at the business side of things from systems and those kinds of things, help source equipment depending on how far along you are. Anyway, long story short, I ended up going and doing his course, and which was, like I said, it was only a week long, so very concentrated and very much an overview.
But immersion, like in the name itself, right?
You're right in it,
jumping in,
exactly. Anyway, so I came back, guns loaded, trying to figure out what I was going to do, started looking for space, started trying to source equipment, and believe it or not, at that point, location and physical space was a little bit of a challenge because the market was so topsy-turvy with the economy. Buildings that were available had all kinds of hair on them, so to speak. So whether it ended up being a landlord that was upside down, getting ready to lose the bank to a foreclosure, whether it was a building that was too close to a church or a school, or just all kinds of crazy things.
Right. So everything had something
everything
attached
had,
to it.
yeah. So I spent 3 or 4 months doing that, and I thought, wow, this is so much more difficult than I expected. Even just trying to find that perfect location.
Yeah.
And so I scratched my head and was getting really frustrated, and staying in contact with Tom up at Colorado Boy. Tom said, hey, why don't you, I need help, why don't you come up, spend a year here, get that much more experience, and maybe when you get back, the economy and market be a little bit different, and also you'll be more confident in what you're doing, because honestly, I was probably a little bit gun shy as well.
Yeah.
So anyway, very long story, but make it short.
It's great, though. I like it,
I spent a year in Colorado working at this tiny little brewery in this little mountain town. Enjoyed every single minute of it. Would have stayed if I could have, turned it into a living, so to speak.
Right.
But it was funny because talk about small. It was, basically a little 20, 25 seat pub.
Gotcha.
Summertime, the patio or the sidewalk areas all open up, so I could see a lot more. But just a very, very fun experience, and that really was the epitome of a small hometown brewery.
Yeah.
And I end up, I loved everything about it.
Right. Well, you have to have seen something in you too to offer that to like
you
were going into it serious.
Yeah. Well, and we hit it off, and the fact that he needed a little bit of help just from a staffing perspective. B, I think we intrigued each other in terms of some of our business background.
Okay.
He'd done some very large projects in the beer industry and restaurant industry as well, down to Colorado Boy being the smallest, and so it was a good mix.
Yeah, and it probably ingrained in you that passion, like even deeper of this is it. This is what I want to do. Yeah. So, and one thing you sent out the other day on your social media that I loved was the letter. You sent out test results as a kid, right? As a doctor. So that to me, just took it home. Dude, this guy follows through. It's not hey, a doctor exam when I'm a kid, So what was that? Tell me about that.
That was really funny. So I don't know what my infatuation was, but I either wanted to be a veterinarian or a doctor very early on, and then it turned into being a truck driver at some point. It's so funny.
Okay.
But I was absolutely, to look at a stethoscope or a syringe or any of those things. I asked at 9 years old for a first aid kit for Christmas. Just goofy stuff.
Real bandages and stuff.
Real bandages and stuff. And I got my cousin who was older than me at that point for her to play along with me in terms of being the patient, and I typed up the results and and sent them off to her in the mail, and she mailed it back to me. She was going through her stuff, and a couple of weeks ago she mails it back to me, literally from 30 years ago or so. So anyway.
That's pretty awesome. Yeah, I laughed at that. That's super thorough, and it even had a stamp on it, important test results or something.
Exactly.
Yeah. So you go to Colorado, and now at this point you're like, this is what I want to do. So the North location opened up in 2012, right?
Yeah, exactly. So I finished up at the end of 2011 up at Colorado Boy, came back and was able to, again, start looking pretty hard. even though I wanted to kind of be in a little bit more central area, that particular location up there fit in terms of size. It had some built-in infrastructure because it had been an operating restaurant before.
Okay,
a small one at that, but it had been an operating restaurant. Believe it or not, the landlord at that point actually had a little bit of tenant improvement money, which was pretty much non-existent at that point.
Oh, okay.
So it helped with some of the build-out costs. And I knew that area from being a kid. I actually grew up south of there, kind of right in between this south location and that north location.
Okay.
But along the way, I used to race bicycles as a kid, and I worked at a couple bike shops that were at Scottsdale and Shea.
Yeah.
And so very, very familiar with the area just because the bike shops were up there.
Yeah.
And so I thought, you know what, I'll give that a stab. And, you know, it ended up being a little bit out of the kind of centralness of a lot of the craft community. But at that point, when we opened in 2012, if I'm not mistaken, statewide, I think we had about 30 breweries.
That sounds about right,
somewhere
yeah.
30, 35. And today, I think statewide, we're closer to that 70 number.
Yeah.
So obviously, the incredible growth. I guess where I go to that is it was definitely a very local neighborhood place.
Yeah.
But at that point in 2012, we had a lot of people from other parts of the valley traveling up there because there weren't that many breweries around. Matter of fact, we were the only operational brewery in Scottsdale at that point. Not that there hadn't been before.
Yeah.
Hops had been around before and several others. But at that point in time, we were the only actual operating with a brewery on site.
Yeah.
And that's obviously changed a lot. The landscape obviously has changed. But anyway, opened that in 2012. Signed the lease in April.
Okay.
And then did as much of the build out as we could ourselves. And then opened the doors physically in November.
Gotcha.
So this November will be 5 years old there.
5 years, nice.
Yeah.
That's awesome. We used to live right up there. We lived at Tatum and Shea, so we would always drive. By there, and we see the sign like brewery open. We're like, we're so anxious. So then when we first went, like we were blown away because the beer was fantastic. So my wife and I, she's not much of a craft beer person. I've talked about her a few times in previous episodes. I don't know how she feels about that, but she knows.
Yeah.
You know, going into like places like Mother Road and you know the original historic location in a warehouse. You know, it's for craft beer people,
right?
You know, and she would go and she loved it, and especially if they had really good water. Like if they had good water, she's like, okay, cool, I'll go back. But when we went into your place, she was blown away. She's like, I love this place. She's like, it's beautiful. Like, I think you guys had wine at that time, right?
Yep,
immediately.
we did. Yep.
But just the design of it, like, it was like a higher scale like brewery, and it was.
It was so funny
fantastic.
because we did all the build out ourselves, other than the big structural kind of things. But my goal was, and it turned out turned out nicer than I actually expected it to.
Nice.
You know, it's funny. We did this on a shoestring budget.
Okay.
Very, very shoestring.
Yeah.
So built tables ourselves, refinished all the chairs, poured a concrete bar top. You know, ran the draft lines ourselves, you know, repainted everything, fixture-wise, all that kind of stuff. So it took me much longer. I probably would have been better off paying somebody because it probably took us an extra couple months longer than it really should have.
Yeah.
But I think it translated into the look and the feel of the place.
Yeah.
One of the biggest compliments that I get, and one of my proudest moments, although I'm proud of the South location here, I'm really proud of that because it is that small, intimate little neighborhood place.
Yeah.
Super comfortable, so easy to talk to people up there.
Yep.
I mean, we have regulars that have been there from day one, and knock on wood, other than just recently, the majority of my staff has been with me for almost the 4.5 years.
Oh, nice.
We're just now starting to see some significant changes there. But anyway, it's been a great little location. Some of the attention is pulled away from it because the South location opened.
Yeah. Okay.
So with this being the broader scale in terms of a restaurant, bigger menu, the North location, of course, for you obviously know the menu there, but it's wood-fired pizzas, salads, you know, wood-fired appetizers, those kinds of things.
Yeah.
And then at the South location, we have a full kitchen.
Big
you know,
menu.
pretty much does a little bit of everything. So.
Yeah. But don't downplay those pizzas up there.
Yeah,
now. Those things are unreal.
Pizzas are that's our shining point. So we'll take advantage of continuing to highlight those.
Yeah.
But we're gonna do a little tiny bit of a kitchen remodel up there. And
okay, nice.
And just at 5 years, I think it's time to freshen up things a little bit as well.
Yeah, gotcha. So what about this location? What when did you get to a point where you're like, okay, it's time to take that next step?
Okay, good. Actually, it was funny because you've saw the size of the north location. So it's, like I said, about 45, 50 seats in 2,200 square feet, including the brewery. So everything's packed right in there.
Super right in there.
Yeah.
And that's kind of cool that you have that little place where you can see brewing.
The brewery kind of surrounded by the glass, so you could kind of see what's going on.
Yeah.
We're hauling, bags of grain in for the brew day, and we're shoveling it out in barrels, once we're finished, and all during the middle of service. What we found out right away was it was very difficult for us to keep up on the demand of the beer.
Oh, gotcha.
In a perfect world and in hindsight, I should have had 3 or 4 more fermenters up there to be able to produce the amount of beer that would have probably made or put off looking for another location to brew beer, if that makes sense.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
So we only had a couple fermenters there. We would brew and ferment and do the process as quickly as we could without compromising the quality, but we would run out of our own beers on a regular basis.
Yeah.
When we were, our first year, we might have 3 or 4 of our own beers on, which back in the day, I think that used to be acceptable, but it's certainly, the consumer does not like that these days. They want a big selection.
Well, especially if it's something that they like and they go back and they want the red and they're like, sorry, we don't have the red.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And then one thing that we did that ended up being probably complicated our lives even more, but we felt very strongly about it, was we love to do one-off beers and experiment a bunch. Kind of my again, a really proud moment, and if we had a little claim to fame early on, it was that we brewed about 200 different varieties of beer in our first 2.5 years.
Okay.
So things were
Gotcha,
rotating
yeah.
all the time.
Right.
And the beauty of having such a small scale brewery is you can mix things up without a whole lot of financial risk.
Yeah.
But I was running into the problem of kind of aggravating our customers by, like you said, not having that favorite, that core, if you will, available.
Yeah.
But we had also other people that would travel up because they knew it was always going to be different.
Right.
So anyway, fast forward, we're 1.5 years into it, and I'm like, I'm trying to see if we can go sideways, up, out the back door, figure out a way to put another fermenter or 2 in there.
Yeah.
And the locations next to us, neither one of them were going any direction.
Okay.
So we were pretty much landlocked at that point.
Yeah.
I started looking, in essence, just to go brew beer off-site somewhere.
Okay.
And feed that location with supplemental beer brewed off-site. And in a warehouse kind of environment, not necessarily to focus on production per se, but to really just supply that or maybe another little operation like that.
Yeah.
I had no plan and still don't really have a big plan to get into any large-scale distribution. But that kind of environment, it does exist, but it doesn't exist without me driving, and this is where I get really selfish, without driving 30 or 40 minutes across town to be able to afford a rent structure that would make something like that work, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So
you live close too, right?
Yeah. Basically living kind of south central, it kind of made sense. So, for me to find a reasonable rent or to be able to buy a building reasonably cost, I was going to be spending an hour commuting every day to a location that would be affordable.
Yeah.
And so I thought to myself, well, it may actually take a second location that has a brewery in it, and I might have to just up my budget, so to speak, to be able to afford the space and produce enough beer.
Yeah.
This building became available. It had been vacant for several years.
Okay.
It has a pretty long history to it. It had been a series of buffets over its lifetime.
Oh, really? Interesting.
Lastly, a hometown buffet.
Okay.
The entire building is 15,000 square feet, so it was a really, really large facility.
Yeah.
And when looking at it, I'm like, I certainly do not need all of that space, but what a great opportunity, because I could use the front of the building for restaurant, back of the building for a larger scale brewery. Still didn't need all the space, so we have a tenant next door.
Yeah.
Again, if you would have asked me in 2011 or even 2012, as I was starting to form or get up and going at the original location, that I would have gone this path, I would have shaken my head no in a very violent manner.
Right.
But it's funny how things evolve, and although it's been a tremendous amount of fun, it has really turned into a business now.
Yeah.
And everything that I love about craft, and the beer side of things, and all of that fun, although it still exists, it just has a different feeling when you have 60 full-time employees, 2 different crews to run, trying to integrate and merge the cultures together,
that
because
would be
they're really different.
Tough. Yeah.
So there's been challenges. It's like I said, although it's been fun, it honestly has been challenging.
It's been a challenging thing. Yeah. When you guys even dealt with, a lot of people know about the name. The name was
that's a wild story.
Oh yeah. Do you want to tell this story?
Yeah. So this is really interesting. As I had been open at the North location, so this again would be actually rolling into 2013 at that point.
Okay.
Amazing how many solicitation calls you get on the phone trying to sell you something, and anyway, a call comes through, and it's a credit card processing company wanting to sign me up for credit card services, and the guy says, "Congratulations on your new location," and I'm like, "You must have us confused with someone else." He goes, "No, I'm up in Boulder, Colorado, and I'm literally looking across at the street of this building that's being renovated. It says Fate Brewing Company coming soon." I'm like, "What?"
Right.
So anyway, I jump online, start doing some digging, and sure enough, I see that somebody has applied for a business registration, liquor license, all that kind of stuff up there using the name Fate Brewing Company. I'd done my state filing for trade name. I had started the process of the trademark, not having ever done either of those before. The state level one's super easy, but the federal one, there's a lot to it. Very long story. Long story short, though, their application and filing beat mine, even though that I was operational and open for about 6 months.
Yeah.
We did have some interstate sales, which is a really kind of a big thing in the trade, in validating a trademark.
Okay.
Our interstate sales was simply participating in beer fests that somebody would buy it, Great American Beer Fest as an example.
Yeah.
So we thought we had a reasonable chance to be able to quash their application, and I met with their principal up there probably 4 or 5 different times, all in friendly terms, saying, "Hey, can we work this out? Let's go have a beer," kind of thing. And
yeah.
It was very interesting because we agreed to basically coexist, and we did that for 3 years. Everything changed like flipping a light switch when I opened this location, though.
Oh, gotcha.
So what triggered it, I believe, is when they saw the size and the scale, and they've got a significant operation up there as well.
Okay.
Certainly was much, much larger than our original North location. And the opening of this triggered it, and we were served with a lawsuit, in essence, claiming their superior use on it. Had lots of discussion, negotiation. At that point, it was time to engage attorneys and all of that stuff that is brutal, expensive, waste of time, and most importantly, it just messes with your mind overall.
Yeah.
Turning something that is so positive into something that is just really aggravating, and everything that goes along with it.
Yeah.
They certainly had their points. I certainly had our points. I still to this day don't understand how they could not have known about our name and operation, but at the same time, it is what it is.
Yeah.
We ended up settling versus going through what would probably have been, thousands upon thousands of dollars worth of legal fees, and still in a very, very gray area whether we would have actually come out our top or not.
Yeah.
And so we decided to go ahead and just add the MC. The whole reason I didn't use McFate to begin with is I really didn't want to use my last name,
okay.
but I thought, Fate as itself
was
kind of cool. And anyway, We slapped the MC in front of it.
Yeah.
Did a rebranding party, which that day actually was one of our biggest days on record.
Oh, nice.
Great support. We kind of treated it a little bit like a garage sale. So we had all logo glasses at that point and all of our T-shirts. So basically, you come in that day and we fill a pint for you. You keep the glassware and all the growler stuff, and it was really fun. Sad but fun at the same time, just because it was amazing how much support there was really out there. We came across as being, we know how fickle and how if you don't react the right way or honorable way, how quickly that can work against you, especially in the craft beer world.
Yeah.
I think one of the examples was when who was it was suing Sierra Nevada over just the letters IPA and had
really?
an enormous amount of backlash just because a lettering or a font was similar. I want to say it was Lagunitas, but I could be wrong.
Okay.
But anyway, we took the high road,
Yeah.
and it ended up working out really well for us.
Yeah.
It was expensive, but here we are today. That change has been a little over a year, and it's gone well.
Yeah, yeah, and you guys keep that momentum going, and you still, and I mean that's got to be a lot, changing out all the merchandise. I mean, every little thing you see, menus, the backs of these chairs.
Yeah.
Were the backs of the chairs were they Fate?
So yeah, they were all stamped with Fate,
okay.
with a iron brand.
Yeah.
Excuse me, a wood iron brand, and so. Again, do-it-yourselfer. I went and had a MC made on this little brand, and we went around and did every little one.
Yeah.
Then the signage out front, slid letters down in areas. Some things were static that we couldn't do that.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was expensive and it was painful, but we used it to spin it in a positive light, and really, thank goodness to our great customers. Turned it into a really positive thing.
Yeah, well, now they're collector's items. Like I have a Fate growler on the fridge in my.
It's funny
garage.
you say that, because we have people that come in the classic shirts, and they're just as proud as can be because they're wearing the original merchandise. So it is fun to see that.
That's awesome.
We have people that go up there and they might be up there being bolder and have a beer at their place wearing our shirt, and it's they tag us and take a picture. So it's
nice,
fun.
nice. I had a friend that moved to Colorado. She's like, hey, she's like, we should go to this Fate up here and yell at him. So I can't remember exactly what she said. I'm like, I'm not even going up there. No, I'm going to stick with McFate. But it just and that, I think that's symbolic of just your reputation within this beer community too. Because since I started this, you've been like at the top of my list of the people that I've wanted to get on the show.
Thank you.
Yeah, and
Appreciate
then
that.
throughout doing it, everybody that I talk to, everybody has a story where you're connected. We're like, I was struggling with this, so I went to Steve, and Steve was helpful. Justin Cross, the Alpha Ale.
Sure.
Like even, a home brewer. Like I was a home brewer who needed, I can't remember what it was because I don't know anything really about brewing, but there was some ingredient he needed, and I think he posted on social media, and you reached out and like, dude, come on down.
Yeah.
That's huge, man.
Yeah, we
That's
had some
awesome.
extra glycol hanging out. And yeah. So, you know what? I appreciate that. It's funny because it really is an industry, although it kind of bothers me that it is changing a bit, just based on competition, but it is an industry where there's a great deal of camaraderie, shared best practices, being hyper-local, somebody running out of a bag of this particular grain, trading around, even trading some hops and those kinds of things. I mean, it really is, I would say, there's 90% that really, that are participating that really get it.
Yeah.
And it's just in their nature. They're good people. Craft beer specifically, I should say, tends to draw some really nice characters. So I'm proud to be a part of it. And, coming from a background where everything was so cut and dry, and it was, everything was about money and deadlines and timelines, and not that I have to run this as a business, so there's sometimes some really tough decisions to be made. But I'm trying my best to keep it humble, to keep it relative to what the craft beer community really is truly about.
Yeah.
Easy to say, sometimes hard to do.
Sure. Yeah. Well, especially if you're known as the guy that hey, if you need something, if you're going to open a brewery, call up Steve. He'll sit down with you. And now you got all these people reaching out.
And that is actually one of the best things. Although my time has become so much more limited recently, but I honestly, to sit down and have a beer with somebody and talk about somebody's dreams or passions or hopes, It's where I was, 5, 6, 7 years ago.
Yeah.
And so, I can appreciate it and love to be able to turn that around. It's funny, Arizona Beer Week, not this last year, but the year before, we hosted an event of how to open your own brewery on it was basically an hour and a half talk about how I did it, how I, what methods I took to learn. My mentor, Tom Hennessy, came down from Colorado, so he spoke
Nice.
and did a little presentation on sourcing equipment inexpensively. And I will tell you, so we held it back in the brewery area before we had some additional tanks. Now it's all full almost. But we must have had a head count of around 75 people. And actually it was more than that because there was a lot of people there had guests. But when I asked the question, how many people are seriously thinking about doing this within the next year, 2 years, etc. I mean, it was amazing how many hands actually went up. People are, they love the idea.
Yeah.
And it's, I'm of the belief that every neighborhood could have its own little brew pub.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be a shining star that's out there competing for all kinds of attention.
Right.
But it, just like a good local neighborhood coffee joint,
Yeah.
I think brew pubs can be that. The restaurant component to it, that's a whole other issue, and it's very difficult to run a restaurant. We're in a market where I felt it was necessary. Just that's my personal belief, although there are people that are doing it without restaurants or brew pubs, but just mainly a brewery or a tap room. But I guess where I'm going is there's plenty of room out there still in Arizona. I think Arizona, cliche, but it's an underserved market, even with the number that we have. But I think if people or entrepreneurs or brewers or beer enthusiasts want to do something, I think it's still available. My encouragement now is something that's hyper local to an area that you really want to be in and build a presence there.
Okay. What do you mean by that?
So as an example, although North, so I'm going to actually speak out of both sides of my mouth. So I'm going to contradict myself a little bit here, and I know I'm doing it purposely, but North as an example, if I had another 3 or 4 fermenters, I certainly would not have looked at expanding so rapidly.
Okay. It was a need.
It was a need.
Yeah.
So today, though, if I have the knowledge that I have today, and I wanted to go in to the industry without enormous risk and enormous expectation, I would look at doing something that would serve a specific community first and foremost.
Okay.
In other words, your lowest lying fruit are the people that are in your neighborhood that will come to you and support you.
Right.
Chasing all of the beer accolades from the beer community. Nothing wrong with that. But at the same time, what I've experienced specifically at North, and it's starting to grow here, are just the sheer number of guests and enthusiasts that come in that are right here in our neighborhood. Sure,
okay.
we have people coming from across town every now and then because they're on a brew tour or they want to try something out.
Yeah.
Like me, I drive across town to go check out a new brewery. But I think as far as sustainability goes, I think if you can build that small local traffic, just like a little coffee place, I think it's a model that works, and I think it works well. And I think if you do it with low overhead, I think there's success to be had. Yeah.
And so you're saying like the area that you're in, like you go to a place like an older community, like retired community, kind of Sun City area, right? Doing more of like.
No, I think it could be wherever you're passionate about being, as long as there's some form of demographic there that you can truly judge.
Okay. Yeah.
And see the value in it. I guess to get my point across, or to try to get it across clearly, is that focusing on neighborhood right around you and building those regulars, not necessarily trying to be everything to everybody.
Okay.
I think that's a great way. There's been some startups that have come out of the gate enormously strong. They're already distributing. Super proud of those guys that are doing it.
Yeah.
You look at Tombstone right now, and those guys, talk about Matt, super nice guy. I've been talking to Matt on and off for several years.
Yeah.
And when he said Tombstone to begin with, I'm like, that's amazing that you're willing to make that kind of a change.
Yeah.
Go down there, pull the trigger in, a relatively tourist market.
Yeah.
And apparently they have some nice local traffic, but he's putting all the effort that he should, and he's reaping the rewards of getting his beer up here with great success and great accolades because it's a good quality beer.
Right.
So that's kind of that's successful, of course.
Yeah.
It's kind of the polar opposite, though, of what I'm talking about, of that small little neighborhood place. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Like they're in Tombstone, and they're not thinking, okay, Tombstone is our market.
Right.
They're thinking, we're in Tombstone,
Yeah.
but our market is
Right.
Phoenix. Yeah, I see what you're saying.
And when I go with a big metropolitan area, and whether it's Phoenix, whether it's a Tucson, whether it's a, just larger metropolitan area, there's so many communities around. Phoenix barely has neighborhoods. There's some that are starting to form,
right.
With substance and with some age on them, and Arcadia is a great example, but it's also it's unattainable for a lot. It's just become such a high priced area.
Right.
But
right.
Where I'm going with that is I look at I'm gonna draw a blank. Thank you. Some of those small little beer bars and tasting places,
like a Wandering Tortoise.
Exactly. That's where I was going.
Okay.
Justin over there totally lost it. Sorry. Hi, Justin. Anyway, obviously great success because they're focused on quality and they're bringing in a ton of people from their little area.
Yeah. And people love that. Like if it's like, dude, Wren House is right down the street from me. Yeah. That's interesting. And I think that was a key to your north location was that engagement that the staff had with the people. Like I felt like bad when we moved. So probably a year after you guys moved in, we moved like north. So I'm like, that was one of the worst things for me. It's like, I'm not going to be by fate anymore, So when I'll go in there sometimes, it's almost like an envious, like what could have been, because I go in there like, oh hey Jim, oh hey Tom, you want to, and I'm like, well, that could have been me, But that's awesome because that's the engagement that staff is having with that community, and the people locally are going there, and that's their spot, So.
Yeah, no, it's there's a lot to be said for it, and it's again, it's honestly is my proudest moment is the community side of what you can build.
Yeah,
so.
Absolutely. And I don't think we haven't even talked. You guys actually have beer here.
Yeah,
too,
we have
right?
beer. Yeah.
So you've got a lineup here for me, and the first one that I had, that was the False Promises.
So
that was fantastic.
Did you do False Promise or did you do? Yeah.
Yeah, I did False Promises.
Gotcha.
Yep.
Yeah. So very low IBU beer. Excuse me. Basically, getting its bitterness, if you will, or hop character, really all outside of the boil process. So typically speaking, a lot of the flavor is derived during boil process because that's when hops are going to do their thing from a flavor perspective.
Okay.
Dry hopping, you get more aroma. You can certainly get flavor on it as well.
Right.
And that's where, in essence, this beer was basically all to get hop character was all done in a dry hop kind of a manner, so outside of the boil.
Gotcha. And so of everything you have, that would have been the closest thing to like a New England style, in a way.
Just in terms of, it was a cloudy beer, and there's a lot of character to it from the yeast, but it's still quite a ways away from what a true New England style would be, which is obviously on fire right now.
Oh, yeah.
You never say never. We'll, I have no problem doing one of those types of beers. We get lots of requests for it.
Right.
There's so much going on with them right now. We might wait for the market to settle down a little bit and do something on it.
Yeah. It was fantastic, though.
Good.
It was, and then this one right here. This is the big one right now. This is the Ochata milkshake.
So, interesting beer. We have basically a wheat base with a lot of milk sugar in it, and I don't know if you remember or had tried before, but our kind of goal on that beer is to take the same base of it and add a different adjunct per batch. So we did a strawberry milkshake.
I remember that one.
And then this is the Ochata version of it. So same base beer. This one, Adam and crew back there did basically an oat milk.
Okay.
So steeped a bunch of oak, created a milky solution off of it, and used a lot of that. And then, of course, some cinnamon on it. So kind of going after the horchata theme on it. But lots of milk sugar in it, so it gives you a little bit of a, I don't know if you want to call it creamy, but you definitely get body in it in terms of that.
Absolutely.
So,
yeah, it's fantastic.
Yeah, it's been a fun beer. I'm not personally a big fan of horchata per se myself.
Okay. Yeah.
The strawberry version of it, I absolutely love. But what's fun about it is, so we're going to take that and we'll do different, like I said, I'm not sure what's on the burner next, but we'll do that same beer, maybe it'll be an orange milkshake next time, or who knows, but again, that's the beauty of, and we've done that with several different base beers that we've just changed what that adjunct might
have
actually
that foundation, and then you can kind of go off from there.
One of the beers that we do, although it's not on the menu right now, but the single hop series.
Okay. Yeah.
So it's a single hop sour, so a very mild sour, but we'll take and we'll mix up what the actual hop is used. It's one single hop, so you get a little bit of a profile of what that hop character might give. So it's kind of a fun way to be able to judge what this hop brings versus that hop.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
Yes. And I'm officially, like, for my listeners, I'm officially on the sour train now. It took me a while I was like, sour is like, and each time I would tell people, I'm like, I don't really like sours, but yours is really good. So then I started realizing, well, maybe I do, because everywhere I go and I have the sours. This thing is fantastic. This is the Fruity McPunch.
It's a Fruity McPunch, yeah. So lots of really good feedback on that beer. It's interesting because we don't do that many sours to begin with, and the sours that we do tend to be relatively mild.
Okay.
It seems to be what our customer base wants, as well as what our abilities are. Souring beers, as we know, can be a really big challenge in a brewery just because of cross-contamination and all that. So we kettle sour our beers, which is not uncommon for a brewery to do. But basically what we do is we boil off any of that harmful bacteria before it would have a chance to be able to get into anything else.
Okay.
Well, some of the big sour house breweries that's all they do, or they have a specialized segment or area, they'll use different techniques on it. But anyway, long story short, on the Fruity McPunch, it's really just gotten a lot of attention. People that don't like sours typically, or are averse to a sour beer, are trying it and really enjoying it because it's got a lot going on. It's not super sour, but lots of the obviously lots of the fruit characteristic on it and a little bit of everything in there.
It really is because that's a great name, McPunch, because it is like a fruit punch. Yeah, and it's you guys describe it as the perfect poolside pink drink. Yeah, and that's a great description. Yeah,
and at 5%, I mean it is an easy drinker. You can. You can have a few of them and still feel pretty good about yourself.
That's right. That's right. And there's even a malt liquor on here. That's what blew me away. Is I've never seen. So this is what is this? Tell me.
So Maria's Fine Malt Liquor. So it's American style malt liquor. Again, trying to be creative all the time. That was the first one you had.
Yeah. I'm looking. I'm like, oh, it's gone. I was going to take another drink. Yeah.
Trying to continue to be creative and come up with things. And I'm going to give all the accolades here where I've skipped over Adam Schmeichel, who is our head brewer. What an amazingly creative guy. His background, certainly in brewing, he did a little bit of work in the wine industry, but he also has a Culinary Institute of America degree, which is a pretty high-end culinary degree out of New York City, Hyde Park specifically. Yeah. This guy gets flavor combinations, melding and mixing and all those kinds of things. So he's super creative, but even the most creative guy every now and then, and collaboratively, we scratch our head and go, what's next?
Right.
And it was kind of funny because I don't know how the subject of malt liquor came up, but, as a younger drinker, let's face it, I might have gone for a higher ABV beer based on the economic situation that I was once in.
Absolutely.
And so we thought, well, heck, let's have a little play off of the old style malt liquors and see if we can actually make something that's got some nice flavor to it, not be overly hot, not be crazy. And so it came about. We did a single batch of it. Will it come back? Probably not. People like it, but they like it as a one and done kind of thing.
Right.
It's got a little bit of horsepower at 7%.
Yeah,
it's not in everybody's wheelhouse, but it was a really fun beer to do.
Yeah. So. Well, and I love the description too. It is simply impactful. Fine malt liquor for distinguished taste Inspired by the good old days.
Truly.
Yeah.
I don't know about you. Do you ever remember Mickey's Big Mouths?
Mickey's. Yeah, and what was the other one too? There was a lot of malt liquors that came in 40s. I'm picturing the logo of it. I can't remember what it was, but there was like Colt 45 was malt liquor, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but you're right. Like you're like, okay, I'm not going for flavor. I'm in college. I've got $14 between three of us.
We've got to make this. Got to make it work for the evening or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
So
Old English, that's what I was thinking.
Old
English, the OE, But it's good though. That was really good, and I wish I could taste it right now too. But I drank it all already. But that leads us to this last one, because you got quite a few on. I mean, how many you have on tap? You brought close to 20.
So we probably have about 16, 18 beers total on tap.
Okay.
We're trying to hover. It's interesting. You know, like I said, starting out where we had struggled to keep 3 or 4 beers on tap.
Right.
When we opened here, I was struggling to keep maybe 8 or 9. We've added fermentation space here. We pre-planned, so there's lots of room on it in the brewery area. Long story short, my goal is to have 12 to 14, maybe 16 beers max. It's interesting because once you cross that threshold, anything above 14 or so, it's interesting. It actually starts to work away from you a little bit or against you just a little bit just because there is such a broad selection on it.
Right.
But it's fun nonetheless. Some of our batches aren't full size where we're double batching. So we still like to do the one-offs. So anyway, long story short, 14, 16 on now.
Yeah. When you've got the ones that you always see here, right? I mean, you've got the red, you've got the
so
Gatos.
we are building. It's funny because believe it or not, almost 5 years into it, and we're still trying to figure out what our core beers really are.
Okay.
And what we do know, our Irish Red, which had great success with, that was a beer that when I was at Colorado Boy, I was lucky enough to be on the brew team. We won a bronze medal.
Oh, nice.
Great American Beer Fest. Tom has won probably 4 or 5 medals on that particular beer. He was kind enough to share the recipe and let me go with it here, and we've made some tweaks on it here. And then our Buena Vista Blonde on the lighter side and Oatmeal Crisp Lager. Those are 2 that are going to be around on a regular basis on the lighter end of things. Oatmeal Crisp is kind of nice. It's one of the few lagers that we do. It actually has some flaked oat in it. And so it's got a nice smoothness to it from that.
Okay.
I mentioned Irish Red. Fateful, our IPA, it's kind of our go-to IPA.
Yeah.
That's a beer that we have on all the time. And once we're almost at the point, hops are always a big challenge, especially for the big IPAs.
Yeah.
We're getting into a point where more and more of our hop contracts are starting to kick in.
Okay.
Hop contracts, futures, basically.
Yeah.
And so Fatality, which is a beer which is not on the menu right now, but by far our best-selling beer overall when we have it.
Okay.
So my goal is to turn that into a year-round beer.
That's fantastic. That's one of my favorites,
It's kind of the roundness of it. We're coming up in, not to switch subject, but in October, I don't know if you've heard of our Candy Bar Milk Stout before.
Oh, yeah, I haven't heard of it.
Yeah.
Have you heard about the candy? Yeah, I love it.
So,
Snickers and a beer, yeah.
We were really lucky. Again, we opened in November of 2012. The following September, we won a silver medal for the Candy Bar Milk Stout up at Great American Beer Fest.
That's right, yeah.
So that kind of set that beer on fire. Milk stout base, roasted peanuts, cocoa nib, vanilla beans, a little bit of sea salt in it. So that'll be released the week before Halloween.
Okay. That's a big demand every year when that's coming out. People are like...
Yeah,
like
and this year we bought a small little tiny canner. Bought it from the guys down at Dragoon in Tucson.
Okay.
And it's a little 2-head manual cask canner. And we hope to have actually cans available of that for the release as well.
Okay.
So that'll be a first for us in terms of a beer that has a little bit of horsepower behind it in terms of demand to kind of can it and do a special release day on that.
Nice.
So.
That beer's fantastic.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm usually we were talking before, like you're a hophead. You like the IPAs, I do too. I like stouts now and then, but when I tried that one, I'm like, it's like a Snickers beer. Like this is fantastic, and each year it's a little bit different, right? I mean, obviously there's going to be little differences, but every year it's fantastic. So.
Yeah, we've done some variations of it. You know, we did a thin mint version of it once. We did a coconut almond version of it. Did
I
an
think that
Imperial king size version. So
I think that was last year, right?
Yeah,
There's a coconut version of it, I think, last
that
year.
was last year. Yeah,
Yeah,
coconut
that was
version,
really
and we did
good.
the king size last year as
Okay,
well.
gotcha.
So yeah, it's a fun seasonal beer for us to mess around with. That's our only seasonal at this point.
Okay,
So,
gotcha. So the last one that I got here, this one's pretty exciting because this is local, right? So we're talking about the local focus and this AZ Malt IPL, India Pale Lager.
Yeah. So first of all, an India Pale Lager, something kind of different anyway. So basically a lager with a nice hop profile to it. But making it a whole lot more special is obviously using local malt.
Right.
And then doing the collaboration with Wonderlust, Nathan and crew up out of Flagstaff. It's basically a German style lager, hops, very crispy in flavor. We would love to be able to do another. Well, would love to on a regular basis. Would love to use more local malt if we could.
Yeah.
It was the first run that we've done because the maltster is just getting his production.
Is that Sinagua?
Yeah, us.
Is that how you say it? In Verde Valley?
I believe so.
Okay,
Yeah.
gotcha. Yeah. Well, that's a local focus now, right?
Yeah.
They're trying to get malt here in Arizona, so you don't have to bring it in from other regions.
And there's only a couple, if I'm not mistaken, only a couple maltsters that are actually not even maltsters at that point. He's trying to focus on actually malting his own as well. So it's not that it's not that barley can't grow in Arizona. It can, but malting it and keeping it that local is creating a challenge.
Oh,
And
gotcha.
these guys are working on that.
Yeah.
So
That's awesome. And guys from Wonderlust are great too. Like that what is it, is it 928? The 928 farmhouse?
yeah.
I could be completely off with that. It's their farmhouse,
Yeah.
but it's fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but that's just cool that it's that local aspect, and that's my goal with this show, like I told you before, is to get Arizona beer on the national map, because I think that I don't have. I use almost like my my intel, my agents in the field to tell me this, right? Because I've been to San Diego, I've been to Denver, but I wasn't really into the craft beer scene. But I've got friends that are like, dude, Arizona's beer we're up there. We're making that progress. So how do we do it? Like, how does this happen?
So that's probably the single most important question of the day, the year, period of time that we're in.
Yeah.
It's quality. It is interesting because I think Arizona beer has grown so much. There's some really, really fine beer out there that's being produced in Arizona, and yet we still kind of get not necessarily the accolades, and not that every beer has to be rated so highly, this, that, or the other.
Yeah.
But it's interesting because, and I might get beat up a little bit for saying this, but a lot of our really serious local enthusiasts from Arizona can beat up pretty hard on Arizona beer, which I find a little interesting. Not that there's certainly nothing wrong with going out and chasing the whales, not even chasing the whales, but having the affinity for beers that are done over the top. Fantastic. And yes, there's still a ton of room for improvement in what we're all doing on an Arizona level. But we're young in terms of craft beer. Certainly the efforts are being put forward. It's certainly not easy. It's an easy task per se. So how does it, to answer your question, how does that happen? Collectively as brewers in Arizona, it's upping the bar on a quality level all the way around. And that's done by sharing best practices, by investment in the right equipment, techniques, training, everything that goes along with that. There's a great amount of marketing that's done as well in promoting beers, and not that I think that it should be driven by marketing, but getting the word out about some of these special beers or beers that are consistently high quality. obviously makes a big difference.
Right.
To give a shout out, the guys at Dragoon, from day one, and we're good friends. So this is certainly going to be very one-sided in my opinion, but I think they're one of the best breweries in the state. I think they do a fantastic job, and I think they do a fantastic job from a quality level in pretty much everything that they do. They've taken the time, put the resources in, and so I think they're a great example of what leads to greatness for beer. They've done a great job.
Yeah.
Anything that I can do and emulate based on their quality and the path that they followed, I'm happy to do. And each time we've done a collaboration, we've done a couple over the years. It's always been fun, and it's always been a really special beer. So anyway, it comes down to quality.
Yeah, producing quality.
And getting the word out. And so many of us are small enough to where we're not distributing much, if any at all. It takes some time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's new, like you said. I mean, when I moved out here in 2007, like there was, even in 2012, you said there's about 30 places.
Yeah, about 30, 35 statewide, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. And there has been a growth in like the beer enthusiasts, and they're a big part of it too, like you said, of spreading the positive word. And I don't know if I should say this on the air. I say on the air, but I can delete this out if I want to. But I got a buddy in Florida, right? So he ships me beer from there. I ship him stuff, if I get Fatality in cans or if I get Mother of Black IPA, we're sharing it. And so it's like spreading that out, right? Yeah. It's creating that positive, that positive energy out to like, there's some good stuff coming out of here. Yeah.
There is, and it's fun to watch the exchange when trades like that happen.
Yeah.
And I've never been a big trader because I'm lazy. I guess I just don't put that much effort in it.
Right.
But I'm lucky enough that I have friends that do. So every now and then I get to drink some really good beer that I've not, I may have had it in the past or something that's completely new.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's really fun to see those exchanges happen and hear about the comments of them. And let's face it, there's just so much good beer out there in general. It's hard to keep track of it.
Yeah,
of it all.
It is. It is. Yeah, and you see the ones on Instagram. Like, I've seen so many Trillium cans, but I've never had it. Yep. And then you want to get it, and sometimes I think the hype is you drink it like Pliny, right? So I was going to California, San Francisco, like about 6 months ago, and I wanted Pliny so bad. Like, we went to all these different places. Everybody was sold out. So we get to this bar on Haight-Ashbury, and they have it on tap. I'm like, oh, here it is. Like, I'm taking selfies of me, like, holding the glass before I drink it. Then I drink it, I'm like, like, this is nothing special. It was good.
It's good beer.
It's a good beer. Yeah, but it was nothing like, I've had so many other great beers just here in Arizona that are better than that. So I think, you're right. We're creating great beer here, and just got to do that. And it's, people like me and people in the community that are, we got to spread the word too. It's our responsibility to put this out there and let people see it.
Yep.
So
no, and not just sit here and blow your skirt up.
Yeah.
But no,
please do.
It's activities like this that really do make a difference. The more that we can focus on Arizona breweries, and the more that we can share that with consumers. Heck, I'm in the business, and I still. It's interesting because I used to know every single brewery that was popping open and had a conversation with whoever it might have been that was involved, whether it was down in Tucson, Flagstaff, Lake Havasu, whatever it might be. And now I'm playing catch up, trying to learn about these other breweries, their stories, etc.
Yeah.
So it's really getting the news out there. A lot of fun stuff, a lot of really dynamic things happening. And by that I just mean that there are people that are putting effort out on all kinds of different levels, from the small little 1-2 barrel systems to the expansion of State 48, doing a big project down in downtown Phoenix. So definitely some exciting times ahead.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I get questions or asked as an opinion of, do I think that there's saturation in the market overall?
Yeah.
And sorry, I'm totally taking this into
no,
a different
this is
direction.
great. This is great. No,
But,
I love it.
But it is interesting because, again, I'll speak out of both sides of my mouth, and I'll do it purposely. On a national level, certainly there are pockets that there are. Arizona, when I said earlier in the cast that I think there could be a neighborhood brew pub or tap room in just about every neighborhood of the city, I still believe that. But at the same time, it's all got to be quality work.
Mm-hmm.
So as long as it's quality, I think there's room for it. I think people that get into it for the wrong reasons, and not an intentionally wrong reason or reasons,
right.
but the fact that it is a hobby, turning it into business. That's exactly what I did, and that's usually a fatal mistake for a lot of folks. Let's face it.
Yeah.
And knock on wood, I was very, very lucky to transition and make it work. Or people that might get into it thinking that it's a super lucrative deal, or the fact that we'd sit around and drink beer all day. Although we do get to tip beers, absolutely. That's why we all got in this thing, because we love for our love of beer.
Right.
But there's just so much more that goes into it. So I'm still extremely optimistic that the market is still has plenty of opportunity, especially as we continue to kind of peck away at the AB InBev market and those kinds of things and the challenges that come from that. But it is a matter of staying united and working with our guilds and working with our national organization, the Brewers Association, to make those things happen. But I think if you're in it for the right reason and you're focused on quality, it makes all the difference in the world. I've seen some home brewers that have made the transition over and have done extremely well. Like, their beer's out of the gate as solid as a quote-unquote seasoned pro brewer.
Right.
And I've seen others that haven't been that same case.
Yeah.
One of my fears when I opened is, although I had brewing experience and had long-time home brewing, I know I didn't have that level of sophistication or expertise, I should say, to be able to pull it off. So I hired somebody that had that 8 or 9 year worth of experience. And so I guess a bit of advice or something that I've taken away from it is, don't be afraid to say you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
In it, and relying on the advice of people that have done it before goes a long way, and hopefully that all translates into good quality product.
Right. And that is the key, like creative, a great product. And one thing that you said, and this is a common theme, is the money. You don't get into this to get rich, right? I've said that to a few people and they've just laughed. Like, no. Like, I talked to one of my favorite guests of all time is Ben from Crooked Tooth down in Tucson.
Sure.
And he was telling me about, I'm working 8 hours, 10 hours a day at my job. And then we'd come here and we'd work 7 hours here, sleep for 4 hours. And he's like, we put so much into it. And they're working their asses off, you know what I mean? I go to Helio Basin and you've got Mike and Dustin that are, working their asses off, grabbing glasses off of tables. You guys are in it for the passion. And that's, I love that.
And those are the types of environments that, and attitudes that really, really make a difference. Nathan at Wanderlust, full-time job, and a full-time brewery owner and brewer, there's a lot of hard work that goes into it, and to be able to turn that corner, to be able to turn it into your full-time, first of all, it's scary.
Yeah.
You just got to spend a bunch of money on infrastructure, and then you're going to potentially pull your livelihood away. Some people can pull it off by doing the dual thing. Those guys that you mentioned, they're all young, healthy, strong backs. I don't know if that I'm there anymore. I had to. I like some sleep every now and then. But anyway, No, it's a really fun landscape, though, to see what's going on. All different levels. Like I said, the small little... that's where we came from. That's where I came from, and I love it. And we're still small. We just happen to have a big restaurant associated with it, and that has its own set of challenges.
Challenge. Oh yeah, restaurant in itself. My grandmother ran restaurants for years, and she's like, no, don't even try.
You got to have a special breed of, if I could do this, and I don't mean this in a disrespectful manner, but if I could do this, if I could be in the beer industry, which, again, I chose my path of selling beer under our own roof, and to be able to do that, I felt it was best to be able to have some food along with it.
Right.
And at North, we started with a very, very small kitchen. This one has morphed into something different, but I want to be in the beer industry first and foremost, but the secondarily, I want to make sure we have good food that pairs well with beer, and that it's a good experience all the way around. But let's face it, I would rather sit here and talk about a pint of beer than I would about the next menu change, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yep.
But luckily, we and others that operate in a similar model to us typically have some great creative people on the culinary side to help make that happen.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it goes with that theme of, most people who are successful, they're always thinking like, I couldn't have done it without this person. And that's another thing too of being able to not have the pride of like, no, this is what I want to do. It's like, dude, this is your area. Yeah. Food, take it and run with it. Yeah.
One of my early mentors, not in the beer industry, but early mentors in business was, always hire smarter than yourselves. Just know, you've got to be knowledgeable, but it's okay to have somebody that's a whole lot brighter than you. Just know how to manage the situation.
Right.
Not that you're controlling them, but you know how to manage the situation. So I made up it's got to be 8 to 10% smarter than me, and they're good.
Are you a spreadsheet guy too?
I was back in the day, not so much anymore. But I mean that was just a silly, it's got to be a minimum of 8%.
Right. I need you to answer these questions real quick. Mark this box from 1 to 3. Yeah. Well, Steve, this has been awesome, man. Is there anything you want to add? Anything you want to add before we wrap things up?
I just appreciate the fact that we finally were able to catch up, and appreciate your interest in learning a little bit more about us.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I've been coming to you guys for years. This is the place that I go to, and actually the North location typically, because of that just neighborhood feel. When we bring people from out of town, they're like, oh, dude, let's check out breweries, because they know I'm totally into breweries, so I'm going to take them somewhere good. It's always the first place.
I appreciate
that. Yeah, absolutely. So in the, what is the fennel sausage and goat cheese pizza is the go-to. I'm like, we'll take 5 of those. They're like, well, there's just 3 of you. I'm like, that's all right.
We'll do it.
Right. Like I said, 5 of those, please. But no, I really appreciate this. So, you guys there's the south location at Scottsdale Road in McDowell. North location is Scottsdale Road in Shea.
Correct.
Right?
Yep.
McFateBrewing.com.
Yes.
Got a Facebook page at McFate Brew Co. on Twitter, and then McFate Brewing on Instagram.
Got it. Yep.
Beautiful. All right, you guys got to come here. I would say I'm going to throw something out. The pizza at the North location is my selection for
Absolutely.
Sure. Yeah, that's my food of choice. Here, the wings at the South location.
They're pretty good.
Fantastic.
Thank
you. The beer, I would recommend. I love this False Promises IPA. This is really good. So, if it's on tap, drink that. If it's not, drink something else, because they're all good.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, Steve.
Good. Absolutely.
All right.
Cheers.
Hey, thanks for listening to the show. If you enjoy the show, do me a favor, go to iTunes and give me a rating and review, tell a friend, spread the word, trying to get Arizona beer on the map. Big thanks to my man, Aaron Marcus, who's been shooting a video for a lot of these episodes, and his branding ideas and everything. This guy is awesome. So check out his page, his Instagram page, at 8 a.m. Films. That's at 8 a.m. Films. That's a lot to say, right? But Aaron is great. So a lot of this video content that we're creating for some of these episodes, that's all him. But so check out the YouTube channel. Last episode we did was Goldwater. Had a full 16-minute episode for that, and we're going to do more of that. We got some really, really big ideas. But check out our website, Instagram, Facebook for TapThatAZ. In the meantime, always remember, stay awesome.